but we can speak in facts because we know this. We know that women play different games to men. They prefer.
How do you know that? What you give me some examples?
Not necessarily, because the people that I spoke to that were receiving people playing the same games that their boyfriends were playing.
They're in the minority. The hardcore gamers who play violent.
51% UK gamers are female.
Okay, we just James already explained to you why you're mistaken about that. That statistic takes into account things like Candy Crush. No, it takes into account things like Candy Crush. It's very consistent when you look at sophomore statistics from universities. There's almost a 25% difference. Men who say that video games are very important to them versus women who say video games are important to them. These are not contentious statistics, they're simply facts. If it were the case, well, you can look up Christina Thomas' work at the American Enterprise Institute. These are not contentious statistics.
Yes, I mean, I am a video game journalist, I'm a video game fan, I work very closely with video game developers, and I know the process that goes into developing video games. I know that millions of dollars are spent on market research or even commissioning a video game.
What about the statistics you said, like how many women, like games for women?
Yeah, so there was one study that came out that claimed that 51% of video gamers are women. And obviously every journalist picks that up because that's a really surprising statistic, and as a journalist we love surprising statistics. It could be true, but when you look down at the facts and you actually read the paper that was published and the questions, it doesn't really hold up because it takes into. I mean, I don't think it's 51%. I don't think the majority of video game players are women.
It seems.
What do you want to
say? It's a 51% study.
Go ahead, go on.
It's true that 51% of gamers are women, but when you break it down by genre, there are differences in tastes across the genders. So
what's that crazy?
So, I mean, games like Candy Crush, The Sims tend to be far more popular with women than games like Dota. Obviously, there are plenty Dota.
Because you kill women in other games.
What?
Because you kill women in other games.
I don't know the reason, but in the hardcore game genre, women are a minority, but in other games they aren't. It depends on the genre.
I think what.
Maybe women don't like to play games, so you like abuse them.
But then why?
Say this, the majority of characters killed in video games are of course men. You're shooting men. If you go through, all levels of any of these violent games, 99% of people you kill are men.
I can't understand whether this is a cause or an effect. Do women choose not to play games because the gaming industry is such a way that they don't feel like they can, or is it the other way around? It's an interesting concept to kind of explore whether it's a cause or an effect.
Well, I think the games developers are, going to develop games that appeal to. If they thought there was an untapped market, it's by the end of last year, $86 billion industry, bigger than Hollywood. If video game developers, big studios with lots of money, lots of research, thought there was a market for women in these games, they'd make them. They don't.
So you said 51%. You want to say what kind of video games you think the 51% are playing?
That's across all genres. It doesn't include mobile gaming. But the fact is, it's circular. You see, because developers are making games based on what they're hearing from a local minority, and the people actually publishing those games have more confidence in games focused at men because of them being the local minority.
Do you think games that cost $200 million to make are commissioned on the basis of hearsay from a local minority? You don't think that extensive market research is done?
The culture. There are many fantastic games that have come out in the last year or two that have had female protagonists. The Last of Us, Bayonetta 2, Bioshock.
Which was rubbish by feminists because her tits were too big. That wasn't good enough for the market.
I was going to say, going back to you saying that these statistics are wrong because they include mobile games and things like Candy Crush and stuff, which obviously is not on par with a linear adventure type game. But as there was a piece actually, I think with the piece which caused Intel to pull advertising from Gamer Sutra by Lee Alexander, which sort of rubbished the notion of a gamer identity. And used some quite offensive stereotyping, to be fair, but made the point that the idea of a gamer being a guy who sits in his pants shooting things is no more, because it's evolving, and it does include different genres, different games, different platforms. So why shouldn't mobile gaming be included in that statistic? Because it's still people that play games.
Because it's a misnomer. It doesn't.
It doesn't have a culture.
But also because I understand what you're saying and what your point is, and if you do enjoy playing, there's nothing on earth that I could think that would bring me to tears other than sitting there and playing shoot 'em up. Like I can't think of anything that's more not me personally. Whether that's because I'm a woman or not, I don't think so. It's just a taste issue, and you're right, if what you're finding is that, in essence, the identity of your gamer is changing, then that's great. It seems to me that Gamergate itself, whether it's about a begrudged ex-boyfriend who's written this article, whether it's about should we have naked women with big tits in video games, it seems like a teething problem. It's in the evolution of kind of video games as an industry, as it grows, this is a great debate and discussion to be having. Whoever stand on whatever side you stand. But you need to be clear, what is it you're talking about? Are you talking about the developers? And are you talking about the people who play games? Or are you talking about the tropes in the game? They're very different things.
James, maybe we need just one ultra-feminist game where you circumcise men.
I'd play that.
Just one.
I'd really enjoy that. I know there was a game.
No, none.
I would play a game with lots of big chests and rippling muscles and huge forearms for reasons that are probably obvious. No, there isn't, which is why those games don't exist, because there's no market for it, because girls and gays don't want to play that kind of thing.
I mean, there are niche markets for video games, which is why we have a thriving indie game development scene where anyone can build a game themselves, which is what Depression Quest came on, Zoe Quinn's game. What I think personally is quite important on this, as a journalist who's worked with video game journalists, is we look at the way that video games are portrayed in the press, and we look at the way that video game journalists have relationships with developers, both professionally and personally. And I've certainly seen in the last sort of 10 years or so is that as video game journalism has moved from published printed magazines to online blogs, I've seen a different professionalism there. And I don't see the same kind of reliable coverage with video games as I do with things like movies or books.
Do anyone actually read game journalism? Like, anyone cares about that?
Yeah, I mean, I am a journalist who writes about video games. And
like a review?
You're a dying breed, aren't you?
I am a dying breed, yeah.
People don't believe anything that you write anymore. They don't believe anything that any of these game journalists write. For the review, to find out whether video games are good or not, they go to YouTubers.
Yeah, I am part of the problem. I will
gladly admit to that. I also was part of the problem. You're probably on the more acceptable end. But
what game do you review recently?
I don't do game reviews, but I write about things that happen within the video game community, which has a huge mainstream audience.
Like the latest story?
So I read about a lot of controversy with Grand Theft Auto because the new version of Grand Theft Auto 5 has a first-person view which allows you to kill prostitutes in high definition. Personally, I'm not
high definition. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, that's a lot of people are upset by that.
Personally, I wasn't upset. Personally, I wasn't upset, but I recognised a lot of people were, so I thought it was worth covering.
Milo?
You're absolutely right about the teething troubles. What happened is this industry grew very quickly, and games journalists who were used to writing effectively for trade, like sort of low-rent trade magazines, like you'll get sort of magazines about, not necessarily the car magazines more consumer now, but sort of certain property magazines, a lot of business magazines. They're sort of written for other journalists, they're written for the industry. Very low ethical standards. Most of the content is in some way bought in, and very homogenous opinions about everything. That's what happened to video games journalism, except abruptly, the people who were writing in this, largely unprofessional, ethically compromised, and ideologically homogenous way, suddenly found themselves consumer journalists because millions of people were reading what they were writing overnight, and their principles and practices did not evolve fast enough to cope with that. And that is part of the problem. You're right about that.
What if someone would invent a video game where you play the Prophet Muhammad, not in an offensive way, just a historical game, you walk, it's an animation of Muhammad, you walk like Muhammad, you do stuff in Jerusalem, 9-year-old wife.
So as a Muslim, I think it's a great idea. I think, in a sense, I think if what you're saying, Milo, is that it's absolutely fine to have these kind of tropes and these kind of characters, if it's all right to have prostitutes that are shot or whatever, if all of that is fine, and damsel in distress, like don't let's start about that, then it should equally be okay to kind of be able to take the piss of other things and be able to kind of say that. But with that great freedom comes great responsibility. And if you are going to be a games journalist, if you're going to be a player, an advocate, a writer about these things, then you can't have one without the other. No industry, including Hollywood, has one without the other. You must explain and analyse and break down and unpack things like that. Why is it okay for you to see this? Or why is it okay to have this kind of an opinion?
I don't think anybody argues over that. I think what gamers were frustrated with was there was only one quite ideologically extreme point of view being expressed at all in the mainstream games press. That's what they were upset about. There had been a lively debate of opinions, a lively exchange of views. Much of this wasn't that.
Between like which views? Like
well, people
completely discounts the context in which gamers work, which is online. So while you have one very extreme opinion being expressed through mainstream media, the conversations that were happening via the community were rampant and very, very well versed and heard. So I just don't think.
Can you give us an example?
The extreme sides of what you're saying is just you don't know anything about video games. You don't know anything about the community. It's too extreme, and you're talking too generally.
you should answer if he knows anything.
You may. I will put myself in.
I can attest to Milo's knowledge of video games. Sorry?
Does he play?
Milo does play. Milo is a player. So when I first met Milo didn't play video games at all, and as part of researching Gamergate, he has played video games extensively.
Probably Postal 2.
Since last week.
No. You can watch his Twitch streams online. They're up there.
The lady doesn't.
So just say what is Postal 2 and then.
Postal 2 is a wonderful game where you get
you say what Postal 2.
you get to go around and decapitate people and urinate on corpses and kill the police.
And you play that for research?
No, because it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's great. You know, it makes me less likely to do it in real life.
Really? Yeah?
Where have we got to? No, I think you are right in saying that a lot of the frustrations of gamers were seeing that the press that they relied on just for a straight up review, it's good, it's bad, it's got however many stars, that's kind of disappeared in favour of more discussion about what's right or wrong within games. And as I've already said, I think it's absolutely right that these discussions are being had because the notion of what it means to be a gamer is evolving, and I don't agree that things like mobile games or games with seemingly no point or no consequence should be completely written off. But I also want to go to something that you wrote, drawing a comparison with UKIP. Milo wrote. I think you wrote basically something on the press. I actually agree with you in that a lot of the press, it was just anything about UKIP, let's just ridicule them, let's take the piss. When actually, some of UKIP's policies are nothing to do with race or immigration. They've got policies about saving Greenbelt, about instating Britain's fishing waters, which has nothing to do with race or immigration, but that's not reported on, and it should be.
I think the point I was making was the point I was making is that there are plenty of normal, ordinary people who are not bigoted, who are not racists, ordinary, regular people with regular concerns who are attracted by things like UKIP. Like there are plenty of normal, ordinary gamers who don't consider themselves to be bigots or racists or misogynists or sexists, who every time they see themselves or something they associate with in the press, they see it being attacked. And one of the reasons it was so easy for the feminists to go after gamers is that they have no social capital. The right hates them, the left hates them, everybody hates them.
Why do you keep saying that when you play video games and you're pissing on dead corpses that it's less likely to make you do that on the street?
Well, it's a little joke, because I was saying earlier that
But it's things to that effect. I mean, what you keep saying is that there's some sort of level of catharsis involved in video gaming. By killing and by raping women in video games, that you're less likely to do it when you're out on the street?
I'm being flippant. The point I'm trying to...
But where do you draw that line then?
The point I'm trying to make is that the evidence that games could make somebody sexist in real life does not exist. There is evidence to show that young men who play very violent video games behave better to each other in real life. So I'm being flippant, sure. Obviously, I'm not somebody
so
who's
video games in which
you
you go out and you do rape prostitutes, or you're
escapism, which you ban
there are form of escapism,
I mean,
yes,
it's an art form in which you investigate taboos, the forbidden, things you can't do in real life. And that's the same in movies, books, and video games. But it's only video games.
Except you never control. I can't read a book and control what happens or where it ends, or how it comes in. Yes, but why do you? I'm just interested in why you seem to think there's a level of catharsis or remedying.
There's a level of catharsis in...
Sure.
So because I think I have to state my bona fides, I've been playing computer games since they came on audio cassette tapes and you played them through the TV. So I've been playing computer games